winter of 1,978 inches, Norwood Park, a suburb of Chicago. A peaceful place, a place where American dreams were nurtured, a place where neighbors waved hello every morning, and children played safely on snow-covered lawns. There, at 8213 Somerdale Avenue, lived a man whom everyone respected. If you met him, you would like him immediately. He was John Wayne Gacy, a successful businessman owning his own construction company, a dedicated precinct captain, a powerful man who was once photographed with the First Lady of the United States. But Gacy was not just a businessman. On weekends, he shed his expensive suit to put on something else. A gaudy costume, a white painted face, and a painted smile stretching from ear to ear. He became Pogo the Clown. He visited children's hospitals, charity parties, bringing laughter to sick kids. He said, "I do this for the smiles of the children." People called him Man of the Year, a model citizen without a blemish. But there was a secret at 8,213 Somerdale that no photograph could capture. Something invisible. Something that crept into the senses. Guests attending parties at Gacy's house often whispered to each other about a pungent, sickly stench, a musty, sweet, nauseating odor. It rose from the floorboards, seeped into the curtains, and clung to the clothes of anyone who entered. Gacy's wife complained, neighbors complained, even the cleaning crews refused to return. But Gacy, he always had an answer. "Ah, it's a broken sewer pipe. It's dead rats stuck in the walls." Or simply, "The winter moisture is making the floor moldy." He lied so smoothly that he began to believe it himself. He spread lime, he poured concrete, he did everything to mask that smell. Because he knew full well that was not the smell of rats. Right beneath the feet of guests toasting to Christmas, right beneath where Gacy slept every night, lay a miniature graveyard. 29 human beings. 29 young men with extinguished dreams stacked upon one another in a cold, cramped grave. Pogo the Clown didn't bring laughter. He brought death. How could a madman hide 29 bodies in his house for 6 years without anyone knowing? How did the Man of the Year become the most brutal monster in American history? Lock your doors, turn off the lights, and hold onto your sanity. Welcome to Strange Frequency. We begin right now. December 11th, 1978. Only 2 weeks left until Christmas. A festive atmosphere blanketed Des Plaines. Everyone was rushing to shop, preparing for cozy parties with their families. Inside Nissan Pharmacy, one 5-year-old Robert Piest was working hard. Robert was a good kid, a typical model child. Good grades, played sports, and loved his family dearly. That day was his mother's birthday. Robert wanted to earn a little extra money to buy her a meaningful gift. But Robert didn't know that his fate and the key to unmasking America's most terrifying serial killer was about to walk through that door. A heavyset man walked in. He introduced himself as a wealthy construction contractor looking for manpower for a new project with a generous salary. To a 5-year-old boy in need of money, that offer seemed like a Christmas miracle. Outside, Robert's mother, Mrs. Elizabeth P.S., was waiting in the car to take her son home to cut the birthday cake. Robert ran out to the car, his face beaming. "Mom, I just met a construction contractor. He wants to offer me a job. The pay is great. Just wait a second. I'll go talk to him and be right back. I'll be right back." That was the most horrifying lie Gacy ever forced a child to say. Because Robert Piest never came back. 10 minutes passed. 20 minutes. Then, an hour. Mrs. Elizabeth began to feel a chill run down her spine. A mother's intuition told her something was wrong. Robert had never kept her waiting this long, especially on her birthday. Most serial killers operate in the shadows. They choose victims who are homeless, runaways, people society cares little about. But Gacy, he made a fatal mistake. A mistake born from sheer arrogance. He abducted a white boy from a respectable family right at his workplace, in front of witnesses, and while the boy's mother was waiting right outside. He thought his model citizen cover was big enough to hide everything. He thought he was a king. The police asked, "Who was the last person to speak to Robert?" The pharmacy owner replied, "That was the contractor remodeling my store." "What is his name?" "John Wayne Gacy." That name made some officers pause. John Wayne Gacy? The guy who does charity work? The guy who organizes the Polish parade? Impossible. How could such a powerful man kidnap a child? But Lieutenant Kozenzak didn't care about reputation. He only cared about the truth. That night, Gacy returned home late, his shoes covered in mud. He thought he had escaped, just like every time before. But he didn't know that this time he had brought a ghost home with him. The ghost of Robert Piest would be the thing to bring his empire of crime crashing down. Detective Kozenzak didn't wait for an arrest warrant. He ordered 24/7 surveillance on Gacy. 2 unmarked squad cars parked right in front of his house. They watched every step, every flick of a light switch, every guest coming in and out. The goal was to make Gacy panic and make a mistake. But Gacy wasn't a normal criminal. He loved the attention. Instead of panicking, he treated this as his stage. He called his lawyer, threatening to sue the Des Plaines Police Department for harassing a model citizen. He believed his mask of a good guy was still intact. And then something bizarre happened. Something no police academy teaches you how to deal with. Gacy invited the officers watching him into his house for dinner. He cooked breakfast for them. He invited them for coffee. He made small talk about the weather, politics, even introduced them to his wife. Imagine that scene. Police officers sitting and eating happily, right in the living room of the man they suspect is a killer. Gacy was laughing and joking. But beneath the wooden floor, just a few feet below their feet, were 29 decomposing bodies. This is the height of depravity. Gacy was enjoying the feeling of absolute power. He was mocking the police. "I know what you guys are looking for. It's right here, but you won't see it." One officer later recounted, "He was too calm. So calm that I started doubting myself. Are we tailing the wrong person?" But then, that smell wafted out again. December 13th, the police obtained the first search warrant. They tore everything apart. Gacy stood leaning against the door, jeering at them. "You guys won't find anything but dust." But he was wrong. In the kitchen trash can, they found something tiny but more precious than gold, a photo processing receipt. It came from Nissan Pharmacy, where Robert Piest worked. Gacy said he never went there. This receipt proved he lied. They also found many other things: handcuffs, a fake police badge, switchblades, and a high school class ring. The ring was engraved with the initials J.S. It didn't belong to Gacy. It belonged to John Syke, another boy who had been missing since 1977. The clown's smile began to fade. When the police left with bags of evidence, Gacy understood the net was closing in. He started drinking heavily. He called to harass the police station in the middle of the night. His psyche began to crack. Even with proof he lied, the police still hadn't found Robert Piest. They needed a body. Without a body, Gacy might only be charged with kidnapping and would soon be out on bail thanks to expensive lawyers. They needed to return to that house one more time. Detective Kozenzak recalled the smell in Gacy's house. He remembered Gacy's joke, "Only dead rats down there." Kozenzak had a hunch that what they were looking for wasn't far away. It was right beneath the killer's feet. The cat and mouse game is over. Now is the time to dig. They often say, monsters are not born, they are made. To understand the demon in the crawlspace, we must look at the man who created him, John Stanley Gacy, his father. John Stanley was an alcoholic and an abuser. He was a tyrant in his own home. He beat his wife and children without cause. But the cruelest part was not the physical blows, but the words. Because Gacy had a congenital heart condition, he couldn't play rough sports as his father wanted. His father called him a sissy. He mocked his own son in front of everyone. Gacy spent his entire childhood craving a pat on the head from his father, but all he received was contempt. Psychology calls this overcompensation. To prove he was a real man to his father, Gacy tried to make everything perfect. He joined the Boy Scouts, he worked hard, he got married. He wanted to scream, "See, Dad, I am not a failure." But that trauma didn't disappear. It festered. Repressed emotions and sexual confusion began to form a second personality, a dark persona, craving power and absolute control, things he never received from his father. In 1968, Gacy moved to Iowa. He managed 3 KFC restaurants and joined the Jaycees Jr. Chamber of Commerce. He was respected. He was a local fried chicken tycoon. But it was here that the mask began to crack for the first time. Gacy was arrested for sexually abusing a teenage male employee. He was sentenced to 10 years at the Iowa Men's Reformatory. This should have been the end of his life. But no, this was only the beginning of a master manipulator. In prison, Gacy wasn't a criminal. He became the model prisoner. He cooked for the entire cell block. He organized entertainment activities. He endeared himself to the guards and gained the respect of the inmates. He learned a valuable lesson. If you keep people happy, they won't look at your true nature. 10 years in prison? No. Gacy was paroled after just 18 months. He walked out of prison with a partially scrubbed record and manipulation skills that had reached a master level. Gacy returned to Chicago and immediately applied the lesson from prison. He built the good guy image grander than ever before. He opened PDM contractors. He married a devoted new wife. He bought the fateful house on Somerdale Avenue. He became a precinct captain for the local Democratic Party. He organized parades for the Polish community. He built a fortress of reputation so solid that no one dared to suspect him. But his father was right about one thing. Gacy was not a normal man. The more perfect the mask, the hungrier the monster within became. And when the house door closed, when the suit was taken off, the hunt began. There is an old saying, give a man a mask and he will show you his true face. For Gacy, that mask was made of grease and pigment. It took Gacy about an hour to transform into Pogo. It wasn't just makeup, it was a ritual. With each layer of white powder applied, a layer of humanity fell away. John Wayne Gacy, the businessman, the husband, the neighbor, gradually vanished. Only Pogo remained, an ageless entity, genderless as he claimed, and most importantly, unbound by conscience. Look closely at Pogo's face. Do you notice anything unusual? Professional clowns are always taught a golden rule. When painting a smile, round the corners. Soft lines help children feel friendly and safe. But Gacy was different. He painted sharp, pointed corners. The jagged lines stretched all the way up to his ears. Unconsciously, Gacy violated the most basic rule of clowning. He didn't paint a happy smile. He painted a predator smile. Many witnesses recounted that children often screamed when they saw Pogo. Their survival instincts were sharper than those of adults. They saw the monster behind the paint, while adults only saw a kind-hearted volunteer. Why a clown? Once, while intoxicated, Gacy let slip a sentence to 2 local police officers that would later become a classic haunting obsession. You know, clowns can get away with murder. He wasn't joking. He was speaking the truth. The clown suit was the perfect shield. Who would suspect an overweight man handing out candy and balloons? It allowed him to approach teenage boys, his prey, openly in broad daylight. He lied so smoothly that he began to believe it himself. He spread lime. He poured concrete. He did everything to mask that smell. Because he knew full well that was not the smell of rats. Criminal psychologists suggest Gacy used the Pogo persona to perform a mechanism of dissociation. When donning that suit, he convinced himself, it's not John Gacy doing this, it's Pogo. It explains why he could kill at night, then go to work the next morning, cooking breakfast for his wife as if nothing had happened. He kept the demon locked in a wooden chest, along with the wig and the oversized shoes. But in the end, that line was blurred. Pogo and Gacy had merged into one. And when the mask fell away, what remained was not a human, but a hollow black void. Gacy didn't kill randomly. He had a meticulously honed hunting ritual. On sleepless nights, he drove his black Oldsmobile around areas like Bughouse Square or the Greyhound bus station. Who was he looking for? Young men walking alone, job seekers, or hitchhikers? Gacy's first weapon wasn't a knife or a gun. It was words. He didn't use violence immediately. He used the seduction of power. Hey kid, what are you doing standing out here in this cold? Hop in. I'm a contractor. and I need guys for work, $5 an hour. In the 1,970 seconds, $5 an hour was a fortune to a kid. He preyed on greed, desperation, and most importantly, the trust placed in a man wearing a suit driving a nice car. Once the victim was back at his house, Gacy continued playing the role of the hospitable host. He offered drinks, turned on the TV, creating a sense of absolute safety. And then he began his performance. I know magic. Gacy handcuffed himself, turned away slightly, and snap! The cuffs popped open in less than 5 seconds. He looked at the victim with a challenging gaze. Can you do that? I bet you can't get out as fast as I can. It was a classic psychological trap. Men, especially young men, always want to prove their mettle. They couldn't refuse a challenge. The victim obediently turned his back and held his hands behind him. Click. That was the last sound of freedom the victim would ever hear. The moment the cuffs locked, the act ended. Gacy was no longer the magician. The victim laughed. All right, Mr. Gacy, unlock me now. But Gacy just looked at him and said, I'm the one in charge now. This sudden shift in demeanor, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, caused the victim to go into shock paralysis. They didn't understand what was happening. They went from being a guest to a toy in a monster's hands in a single second. Gacy didn't like guns, too loud, and didn't like knives, too messy. He preferred slow control. He used a technique called the garrote tourniquet. He looped the rope around the victim's neck and used a small stick to twist it slowly from behind. This allowed him to control life and death. He could tighten it, then loosen it to let the victim take a breath, and then tighten it again. He called this the rosary game, because the prolonged suffering was like counting beads on a rosary. In those final moments, Gacy considered himself God. He decided when the victim could breathe and when the lights would go out. And when the victim's heart stopped beating, the contractor's work began again. Dig the hole, spread the lime, and cover with dirt, ready for the next prey. When we speak of a basement, we usually think of a spacious room where one can walk around, but Gacy's house didn't have a basement like that. It only had a crawl space, a technical space, located between the ground and the wooden floor. It was less than half a meter high. You couldn't stand, you couldn't sit, you could only crawl on the cold, damp, insect-infested dirt. It was a place no one wanted to enter. But to Gacy, this was a treasure trove. He realized that this dark space beneath the floor was the perfect place to hide his darkest secrets. No one goes down there to check water pipes. Only him. After strangling the victim, Gacy would drag the body down into this crawl space. He dug shallow trenches with his own hands. To deal with the stench and accelerate decomposition, he poured tons of quicklime over the bodies. The quicklime would corrode the flesh, turning the bodies into a liquid soup, leaving only bones behind. It was his way of shrinking the victims to save space. He turned his own home into an industrial-scale corpse processing plant. But Gacy's killing pace was too fast. 2 people a month, sometimes 2 a week. He couldn't dig fast enough. He started burying them sloppily. An arm sticking out of the ground, he poured more dirt on it. A leg in the way, he snapped it to fit the hole. Imagine this sickness. Gacy hosting a summer barbecue. Guests standing in the yard eating grilled sausages. Meanwhile, right beneath their feet, worms and bacteria were feasting on the bodies of 29 young men. Gacy slept right on top of that mass grave. He didn't have nightmares. He didn't feel guilt. In fact, psychologists suggest he felt comforted. He owned them. They belonged to him forever, lying silently under his control. That is the pinnacle of possession. But the smell, that smell never let him go. It seeped through the cracks, clung to his clothes, Gacy's hair. He became a man who literally reeked of death, no matter how many times he bathed. By 1978, the crawl space was full. Literally, there wasn't a single inch of dirt left to dig. The bodies began layering. Gacy had even blocked the entrance with human remains. My back hurts too much, I can't dig anymore. That was his cold-blooded confession. For the final 4 victims, Gacy was forced to change his method. He drove to the I-55 bridge, spanning the Des Plaines River. He threw them into the river like tossing bags of trash. He hoped the freezing water would wash his crimes far away. But the river kept no secrets. And the final body, Robert Piest, was not thrown into the river in time. That was the slip-up that brought his empire crashing down. The crawl space was full, the river was full, and the patience of justice had run dry. It was time for the light to shine into the darkness. December 21st, 1978, just 4 days before Christmas, Detective Kozenzak decided to go all in. He obtained a second search warrant. This time, they weren't looking for papers or receipts. They were looking for the source of that smell. Gacy tried to stay calm. He said, "You guys make yourselves at home, but don't ruin my carpet." But this time, his eyes were no longer confident. He knew exactly where they were going. Officer Ron Shipp was assigned to check the heating system. When he removed the vent cover in the bathroom, a blast of hot air hit him in the face. And accompanying it was the smell of hell. Officer Ron Shipp was assigned to check the heating system. When he removed the vent cover in the bathroom, a blast of hot air hit him in the face. And accompanying it was the smell of hell. It looked like a piece of rotting wood, but firewood doesn't have joints. Officer Ron Shipp screamed out, "Oh my God, I found a femur!" They gently brushed the dirt aside. It wasn't just a bone. They found a skull, then a rib cage, then an arm still with fabric attached to it. It wasn't a deep burial. It was lying right on the surface. When news of the first body broke, Gacy didn't cry, didn't panic, didn't plead innocence. He just sighed, ordered a portion of fried chicken, and said, "All right, you got me." What happened next made even the most seasoned investigators shudder. Gacy picked up a pen and started drawing a map of the crawl space. He marked every burial spot. In this corner is John. Over there is the boy I met at the bus station. Under the bed is the kid in the blue shirt. He spoke of the bodies not as human beings, but as objects he stored in a warehouse. He was proud of his memory. He was proud of organizing them neatly, like a professional building contractor. The excavation became a logistical nightmare. Police had to tear up the floor, using conveyor belts to move tons of contaminated soil out. The stench was so overpowering that forensic staff could only work for 15 minutes before needing to go out for oxygen. At first, they thought there were only 1 or 2, but the number kept climbing. 5 bodies, 10 bodies, 20 bodies. All of America watched in shock through their TV screens. No one could believe such a small house held so much death. And finally, the total number of bodies found in the house and on the property was 29. Plus 4 bodies pulled from the river, 33 lives, 33 broken families. And it all started with a friendly neighborhood clown. February 6th, 1980, the trial of John Wayne Gacy begins. It wasn't just a trial, it was a media circus. The entire country held its breath to see how the law would deal with the killer clown. Gacy walked into the courthouse not like a defendant, but like a celebrity. He believed he was smarter than everyone there. His tactic was simple: blame it on insanity. His lawyers argued that Gacy had multiple personality disorder, that the kind John knew nothing of the crimes committed by the evil Jack. He wanted to go to a mental hospital where he could live comfortably instead of facing the electric chair. But the prosecution presented a crushing argument. They asked, if he is crazy, why did he dig the graves before killing? If he lost his mind, why did he draw a map of the burial sites accurate to the centimeter? A madman acts on chaotic instinct. But Gacy, he acted like a machine. He planned, he lured, he killed, and he cleaned up. He even negotiated construction prices with clients immediately after finishing a murder. The jury didn't take long to see through this act. They didn't see a mental patient in need of help. They saw pure evil. March 13th, 1980. The verdict: guilty on all 33 counts of murder. The sentence: death. Gacy was sent to death row at Menard Prison. Here, he lived for another 14 years awaiting execution. And during those 14 years, Gacy did something that outraged the world. He became a painter. Gacy painted thousands of pictures in prison. His favorite subject? Pogo, his murderous alter ego. He painted Pogo smiling, Pogo juggling skulls. What is even more horrifying is people bought them. A sick market called murderabilia hunted for Gacy's paintings. People paid thousands of dollars to own the work of a man who killed 33 people. Gacy gloated, "I'm more famous than Picasso in this prison." He showed absolutely no remorse. He turned his crimes into a brand. He sent autographs and letters to fans. He never apologized to the victims' families. Not even a single word. But Judgment Day finally arrived. May 10th, 1994. John Wayne Gacy was taken to be executed by lethal injection. Outside the prison, thousands gathered to celebrate, drinking beer and cheering as if their team had just won a championship. When asked if he had any last words, Gacy looked straight into the guard's eyes and uttered a sentence that perfectly captured his nature. "Kiss my ass." Those were the final words of the killer clown. A needle ended the monster's life, but it could not erase the pain he left behind. The house at 8213 Somerdale Avenue was completely leveled in 1979. They wanted to wipe it off the face of the earth, as if erasing an ugly scar from the face of Chicago. For many years, that land was abandoned. Weeds grew wild. Children in the neighborhood didn't dare bike past it. Adults took detours. They say that even though the house is gone, the coldness remained. A dark frequency of energy still lingers on the soil that soaked up the blood of 33 people. Today, a new, modern house stands there. The address number has been changed to avoid the curious. Life goes on. Snow still falls every winter, but memories cannot be bulldozed away. John Wayne Gacy is dead. He received the punishment he deserved. But we, the makers of this program, do not want to end this story with his name. Let us dedicate these final minutes to the people who truly matter. Robert P.S., the devoted son who just wanted to buy a birthday gift for his mother. John Sick, the young man with a passion for cars. Gregory Godzik, who had just gotten engaged. They are not just the number 33, they are human beings. They had dreams, families, and futures that were stolen. And also the nameless ones. For decades, many of Gacy's victims were known only as John Doe. But justice never sleeps. In 2011, Sheriff Tom Dart reopened the case, using modern DNA technology to give them back their names. Though late, they finally got to go home. The Gacy case changed America forever. It shattered the stupid 24-hour waiting rule for reporting missing persons. It forced the police to listen to the intuition of mothers. It taught us that society's apathy is an accomplice to crime. And the greatest lesson: monsters do not live in caves. They do not have fangs or sharp horns. They are the friendly neighbor, the funny uncle, the respected teacher. Evil disguises itself in normality. You have just heard the story of the killer clown on Strange Frequency. Hopefully, tonight, when you look out your window, your neighbor is sleeping soundly and not digging a hole somewhere in the garden. If you enjoy these chills, hit subscribe and turn on notifications. There are many strange frequencies waiting to be broadcast. I am admin, channel name, and I will see you again in the darkness. Good night. If you can. End of video.